everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Access Blockbusters Pod. Welcome back to episode number 83. Welcome one and all. We are deep into the summer, I don't know, it feels like it. Tons of movies coming out. We're going to talk about Elio in today's episode, as well as some other exciting news, Black Panther recastings maybe, but we're really getting into it, guys, because Ironheart's going to come out soon, and then we have Superman, Fantastic Four, Jurassic World, the movies are going to pick up, so lots of exciting things. Squid Game Season 3, hopefully we'll be able to review that in the next few weeks, so a lot of exciting things to look forward to. But today's episode, a lot of really fun topics as well, including I had a chance to rewatch Rogue One earlier after Andor Season 2, and so wanted to talk about how my opinion on Rogue One might have changed after watching Andor Season 2. So a lot to get into. Before we get into any of that, guys, make sure to subscribe to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel if you haven't already. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, comment down below with any of your thoughts on the topics that we discussed today. And if you're interested in hearing the audio-only version on Spotify, Overcast, and Apple Podcasts, those episodes, the full episode of the podcast comes out first on those audio-only platforms on Saturday mornings in the United States. So make sure to check it out there if you're interested in just hearing the entire episode before anyone else does. That's going to do it for the intro, guys. Let's get into today's topics. Alrighty, guys, kind of weird to say, but we are approaching another MCU Disney Plus show. It's surprising because I personally, and again, this show, we've been talking about it when the trailers have been coming out and whatnot, but this show just kind of has been sneaking up on me ever since it was announced, and then it went silent, and now it's finally coming out in just over a week, and that's Ironheart. And Ironheart, there's a whole backstory to this series that, frankly, I don't even know what it is, because this show was announced, I want to say 2022, surely not 2021, but 2022 at the very latest, and, Black Panther Wakanda Forever came out in November 2022, and it did really well, but, people were introduced to Riri Williams, Dominique Thorne, and people seemed to enjoy her performance, even though, people, myself included, didn't think that her character really fit into the movie super organically, but still, I thought that she did a good job as the character, introducing us to her. And then, we were told that we were going to get a Disney Plus series with her, and that went completely silent for years. They filmed the entire series, we heard, right after Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and just nothing. Crickets. The show is being executive produced by Ryan Coogler. He seems like he's really backing it. It doesn't seem like one of those, taglines to put on a trailer and really the person wasn't involved. It seems like he's doing interviews and he's really behind this character. So that's good. That's exciting because Ryan Coogler is obviously phenomenally talented. But we just haven't heard anything about this project for a long time until finally Marvel is like, oh yeah, we're going to release this in 2025. Whoops, here you go. And it's like, oh, okay, great. And so the trailers themselves have not impressed me, though they haven't been, cringeworthy or anything like that. And I think they're fine. The CGI looks good, at least, which is exciting because that's, Ironheart, right? Part of the fun of Ironheart or Iron Man adjacent characters is the suit-up scenes, and they looks cool. So, yeah, I'm not terribly excited, but I'm really hoping for some good things. And speaking of hoping, this segment is going to be, just like we do with a lot of the MCU, DCU, Star Wars, big TV show, big movie kind of releases, we're doing our hopes and predictions for Ironheart. So here I have 4 hopes. And hopes are essentially, for me, things that I think if the show does, and if the show lands on these hopes and executes on them, I'm not guaranteeing that for me personally the show is going to be a success, but it's pretty hard to envision a version of the show where if it doesn't hit on these things, that it's not a success, in my eyes. And so I'm really hoping that the show can execute on these things. And then predictions are not necessarily related to the quality of the show, but just things I think are going to happen story-wise or even meta, in a meta way, like for movies we did box office and whatnot. So, just things that I'm thinking are going to happen. So let's go through my 4 hopes and 4 predictions for the MCU show Ironheart. Starting out with the hopes. Number 1. Stay grounded in Chicago. So Ironheart is going to take place primarily in Chicago. That is Riri Williams' hometown. And the reason I bring this up, it seems kind of random or obscure, but one of the most successful things that an MCU show has done, particularly with a character in the same age range, being Kamala Khan in her own TV show Ms. Marvel, was the aspects of the show that really grounded her in Jersey City. Right, made Jersey City feel as much of a character as anything else in that show, and showed her friends, showed her family, showed her community. And I would love, because from the trailers, it seems like we're going back home for Riri Williams. We're going back to her home in Chicago. I'd love to really spend a lot of time just in her element, in her hometown, meeting her friends and being with her family or whatever that looks like. I don't have a sense for that, but I really think that one of the most successful parts of Ms. Marvel was allowing us to explore Kamala Khan's home and allowing us to really explore her family as well. And so I'm hoping that, Chicago becomes a character, her family becomes a character, her friends, just her community, her environment, I think is a really big part of the show and will help shape how we view Riri Williams in general. So that's hope number one. Hope number two, don't shy away from Iron Man, but don't copy him either. What I mean by that is, look, it is, to quote Riri Williams in the trailers, it is undeniable that this character is somewhat derivative of Iron Man. Obviously. I mean, she's wearing an Iron Man suit. Don't shy away from that. Don't just pretend that doesn't exist. It's not like I want the entire show to go by without her ever referencing Iron Man. It's an Iron Man suit, right? Like, in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, I think Shuri or Okoye, when they meet Riri Williams for the first time, they're like, is it Stark Tech? I think. And that's more of a passing nod. What I mean by this is that it's very clear that you don't make a suit like this without being inspired by Tony Stark. So lean into that in a sense, reference the fact that she really was inspired by Tony Stark. And that she really wants to do what he did, follow in his footsteps in a sense, right? Not just copy him. That's what I mean by copying him. Because, she went to MIT, he went to MIT, he did that the September Foundation or grant or whatever in Captain America Civil War. Maybe she was there, or I don't know. Maybe she saw that and she was inspired. That kind of stuff, I think, just lean into it, Don't just pretend that there's no connection between the characters. That just doesn't make sense to me. But I also don't want a carbon copy of, okay, so, she gets in trouble, she has to build a suit on her own, Tony Stark built this in a cave with a box of scraps. I don't think we need to go through that again, beat by beat. That just feels way too derivative, and I think that's not going to serve the character well. She's a unique character, going back to point one. She has her own family, her own community in Chicago. Let's lean into that. But also, don't just pretend that there's no connection to Iron Man, right? I think that there's a balancing act there that I hope the show can execute on. Hope number three, we've heard and allegedly seen that Riri Williams is a genius from Black Panther Wakanda Forever with the vibranium detector. Great. Let's really see it though. And what I mean by that is it's fine and all to say, oh, X character is the smartest person in the MCU. I feel like we've heard that moniker so many different times. And now with Mr. Fantastic, with Reed Richards coming into the MCU, we're going to hear that even more. Who is the smartest person in the MCU? There was once a time when Bruce Banner was the smartest person in the MCU. That seems like it's long gone. I mean, not gone, but, we haven't really referenced that. It's now, it's been Shuri. With Shuri, I mean, I feel like Black Panther 1 did a really good job of showing that Shuri was a genius, right? Tony Stark, obviously, they did a great job of building his inventions and inventiveness and creativity. So great. He's a genius. If part of the show is to demonstrate, to explore how Riri is inventing things and inventing the suits and whatnot, then let's really see and establish the fact that she is one of the smartest people in the MCU. It's a moniker that we hear so often, but we don't really get shown it. So that's something that I'm hoping for. And finally, my last hope here is let's not get too goofy with the magic. I think there's a lot of fun we can have with this idea of merging magic and tech, which seems like it's a theme of this show with the Hood and with potentially another character that we'll talk about in my predictions. And I think that's cool and all. And I think that we've seen in the trailers that there's a little bit of meshing of magic with the suit. That's great. I think there is a danger though, and that's why Iron Man, even with Extremis and Iron Man 3, again, kind of science fiction-y, but sure, we'll kind of go with it. But there's a danger with mismatching characters, right? Ant-Man and Kang, while I enjoyed Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania enough, and I thought that the pairing was odd, but fine, there's a danger in mismatching characters like that where it just doesn't really make sense. It doesn't feel like they stack up together. And I'm hoping that with the introduction of magic here, it doesn't get too goofy, and they don't lean into the goofy, because I would like the magic to be taken seriously in the MCU, and that's fine and all. And I hope that there's a balance between whatever's going on with Ironheart and then whatever's going on with the magical element as well. So those are my 4 hopes. 4 predictions really quickly before we wrap up the segment. Prediction number 1, Ironheart sets up Vision Quest somehow, maybe a post-credit scene. Just because Ironheart was filmed a long time ago doesn't, and I'm sure Vision Quest was barely conceived of at the time when Ironheart was first in pre-production, doesn't mean that plans can't change, right? I think in the ensuing time, Armor Wars has gone away. I'm sure that Ironheart was going to have some connection to Armor Wars, and that seems like that's no longer the case. How hard would it be to film a post-credit scene? I don't know. It seems like from all the rumors, again, these are just rumors thus far. Nothing's been confirmed by the trades and whatnot, but it seems like, with especially the confirmation that Ultron is coming back, James Spader is coming back, and now all these rumors about Edith and Jarvis and Friday being cast, all the AIs coming back, there seems like there could be some connection here to Vision Quest. I think that's the most seamless connection in my mind to whatever's coming next, obviously aside from Young Avengers and whatever that's going to look like. I have no idea. I would not imagine that Ironheart is going to have a post-credit scene that sets up Avengers Doomsday. I don't know what that will look like. Maybe Young Avengers, maybe, but still, I doubt it. So my hope is that there is going to be, or my prediction rather, is that there is going to be some connection between Ironheart and Vision Quest. Probably a post-credit scene in my mind, but we'll see. Number 2, let's talk about that other magical character. I think Mephisto finally does show up. How long have we been saying that? Since WandaVision. It's crazy. And frankly, I have never been one to be on the Mephisto bandwagon. I know New Rockstars has been on that bandwagon for years and years, and I just, like, whatever. He's the devil. And that's his character. And there have been rumors and leaks and whatever that, Sacha Baron Cohen is going to be playing Mephisto. Fine, whatever. And I think that it's probably more likely now than ever that he shows up. And I predict that he's going to show up. But my prediction is that he's going to be disappointing. What I mean by that is that I don't know. I feel like there's a way in which we as a fandom have hyped up this appearance of Mephisto in the MCU. I don't know why, frankly. I don't think many people, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but mmany people, think he's the greatest villain in the comics or anything like that. I think we just kind of have globbed onto him for some reason and held him up to be like this mysterious Marvel villain that has yet to show up in the MCU. I think he's going to show up. And I just think he's going to be disappointing and just kind of a throwaway cameo. That's my prediction. Speaking of cameos, I think, my third prediction, that Ned Leeds will have a cameo. I think a part of this show will take place in MIT. We see the dean, right, Jim Rash from Community. He shows up again from Captain America Civil War as well. And I think that, at this point, Ned and MJ should be at MIT. The reason I don't say Zendaya, MJ, is just because of money. No offense to Jacob Batalon. I know he was in Novocaine recently. No offense to him at all. But Zendaya or Tom Holland, but Tom Holland, Spider-Man's not in at MIT, and also he has Spider-Man has a whole rights issue that he can't appear in TV shows. Anyways, I think that Ned is probably the most likely, so I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Ned and Riri Williams have run into each other. So I think that I would think that it would be fun to just see a little cameo of Jacob Batalon remind us, hey, the Spider-Man universe is still going on, and there's some connective tissue here in the MCU as well. And finally, number 4, Robert Downey Jr. will make a cameo. Not as Doctor Doom, not really as Iron Man, but as the AI version of Iron Man. I don't think, and the reason I say this is because, I don't read comics too much, but I do know that part of Riri Williams, at least in one comic run, is that she has an AI mentor of Tony Stark, right? So he's kind of showing up as the hologram. We see in the trailer that she is dabbling in that same kind of AI-ish technology, so there's that. I don't think it's going to be like Robert Downey Jr. is going to show up every single time Ironheart shows up in the MCU and be her little AI assistant. I just don't think that that's what's going to happen. Or even a voice, rather. But I do think that it would be kind of fun if, I don't know, she's trying to make an AI or whatever, or she models something after Tony Stark. And it's just a brief little cameo, because he's in the MCU now, right? He, from what it sounds like, he's been doing stuff with the MCU. He I think, filmed stuff for Disneyland, if I'm not mistaken. So he's not beyond just doing other one-off things. I don't know how hard it would be contractually. I don't know how much they would have had to pay him just for a 2-minute cameo in Ironheart. That would have been maybe part of the decision as well. I don't know. I truly don't know. This would obviously not negate his death as Tony Stark in 616, just like how I'm hoping, at least, the Doomsday doesn't negate, his death in 616. I think that needs to stay. It's poignant. It's powerful. But I think a little cameo as whatever an AI assistant would be, I think that would make at least a little more sense in my mind. There's comic book precedence for that, and I think, just with Robert Downey Jr. being back in the MCU, I think that there is a chance that will happen. So guys, those are 4 hopes and 4 predictions for Ironheart. I'm not going to say optimistic, but I remain interested, and I want to see how the show goes, and I'm hoping for the best, obviously. Like I said many times before, every single show, every single movie, barring a few exceptions, I really hope to succeed. I really hope that they're the best show or movie that I've watched all year. I love being surprised, and so, in a positive way, obviously. And so I'm really hoping that Ironheart turns out to be one of those shows that you're like, wow, one of the best MCU shows ever. Miss Marvel was like that. I still have problems with Miss Marvel on a whole, but overall, really liked it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to whatever happens next. Guys, what do you think about these hopes and predictions for Ironheart? And what are your own hopes and predictions for Ironheart? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys, Andor Season 2 wrapped up about a month ago, I want to say. And it's going to take me a while to process my thoughts on how I enjoyed the season and how much, because I still think, and you can go watch, I reviewed every single episode of that season. There's a lot to love, and there's really a lot to dive into. But for me, Andor Season 1, I revisited it, a couple months ago in preparation for Andor Season 2, and found that on the rewatch, I enjoyed Andor Season 2 a lot more, or Andor Season 1 a lot more on the rewatch. So we'll see about Andor Season 2. But I always wanted to do this because we all had known, based on things that Tony Gilroy, the showrunner of Andor, had said, and based on the way that the show was wrapping up, we all knew that this show would, obviously, because it is the prequel to the movie, it would have massive implications for Rogue One, a Star Wars story. And so it was always my plans to, after watching Andor Season 2 and rewatching Andor Season 1, to then go in and watch Rogue One, a Star Wars story again. Now, for context, Rogue One, a Star Wars story is one of my favorite Star Wars movies of all time. It's been a while. It's been a long while since I have ranked all the Star Wars movies, because it's been a while since I've seen all of them. We did Star Wars Revisited a couple years ago, where I rewatched every single live-action Star Wars movie and ranked them and did tier lists and things like that, and that was really fun. And in that ranking, Rogue One came out as number 2 in my rankings. I love that movie. So it was, it's not going to be a big chore for me to rewatch Rogue One, but still, I think in the context of Andor, I wanted to see, how does Andor as a series, and we're not even talking about quality, we're not talking about things I like, things I didn't like, not even that kind of stuff today. More so, how does watching Andor, if at all, change the way that we watch Rogue One and change the way that we watch Star Wars? Now, I was watching Rogue One. I was watching it again. And it's interesting because at the beginning, you're watching it and you're going, yeah, you can kind of see those connections, right, being made. But it's not like, Andor, I didn't think Andor was shifting my relationship with Rogue One all that much. At the beginning of the movie, and this is going to obviously contain spoilers for Rogue One, but, hopefully you guys have seen the movie by now. It's almost 10 years old. My goodness, next year it's going to be 10 years old. So I would highly recommend checking out Rogue One. Great movie. Anyways, so it was, the beginning of the movie, right, we have the bit with Saw Gerrera. And to be honest with you, and I need to rewatch Season 2 of Andor at some point. Saw Gerrera was one of the characters that, you got his ideology, you got his headspace, you got what he was going through. But I think as a character in Andor Season 2 was perhaps a little bit underused, underdeveloped. And so, you see Saw Gerrera at the beginning of Rogue One, and you see Galen Erso, Jyn Erso. These are characters that are mentioned, Galen Erso specifically, in Andor Season 2, but not really talked about, right? So, not really shown, rather, because he's brought up at the end of, there's this thing, Galen Erso, big weapon, energy. And you're like, okay, got it, Gormans, right? That's all good. And so you see Galen Erso and you see Jyn, and then you see Jyn growing up, right? And then you start to see the beginnings of the rebellion because you're introduced very quickly to Cassian Andor. And so, the mission that Cassian Andor is on is presumably the mission that Andor Season 2 ends on. So he's going off with K2SO to find information, and there's been, information leaking about this weapon, about Galen Erso building this weapon, etc., etc. And so we go on our way. And then, we go into the scene with Mon Mothma and General Draven, I believe, and Bail Organa. And again, it's cool that at the end of Andor, they're all dressed the same way, and it's all very similar in that way, in that respect. So the connections are there, but it's not super overt. So, even throughout I would say about the halfway point of the movie, right after Edu, or during Edu, when they're trying to kill Galen Erso and he dies, I was still thinking to myself, I think Andor, I suppose, enriches the story on the edges. But to me, it wasn't making as big of an impact as I thought it was going to. But then, something interesting happened. The second half of the movie kicked in. And I think it's true. I believe I said a very similar thing when I rewatched Rogue One a few years ago, and I talked about it in that video. I also said at the time that the second half picked up big time for Rogue One. And that's because all the pieces are starting to come together. And as this second half is unfolding, I think I understood, not finally, but I think it truly came together what Tony Gilroy was going for with Andor. This is not a show that when you watch, it's not a twist kind of thing where you watch Andor and then you watch Rogue One and you're like, wow, I all of a sudden have this missing piece of information that makes Rogue One make sense all of a sudden, right? I think Rogue One actually, if this analogy is Andor to Rogue One, in a parallel analogy, Rogue One to A New Hope is actually more of that, right? Because Rogue One to A New Hope, when you first watched it in 2016, way before Andor, you were like, oh, that makes total sense now that Galen Erso, this guy, built in a weakness to the Death Star. It's not just a random, 1977 thing that George Lucas wrote, and he was like, yeah, that'll be fun, and that'll make the Death Star easy to destroy. It now makes sense, right? Retconning, if you will. I don't think Andor really retconned anything to make sense, which, by the way, I want to clarify. The Galen Erso retcon, or whatever you want to call it, I think is great. I think it makes total sense, and I think it really helps enrich and just fill in some of the blanks of, okay, there's just this massive weakness in the first Death Star. Goodness knows why they decided to do that again with the second Death Star. Anyways, so yeah, I mean, that all makes sense. But with Andor, it's not like, oh, big thing that you understand now, and all of a sudden Andor, just makes complete sense, right? It's not like that. It's totally not like that. Instead, you watch the end of Rogue One, and Rogue One, everybody dies, right? They get picked off one by one. And there's this sense of... So first of all, one of the things that Andor I think really helps with Rogue One is the sense of fractures in the Rebellion. Because if you watch Rogue One again, the Rebellion is not united. Saw Gerrera and the Rebellion, first of all, are on not good terms. And that's made clear. But by the time Saw Gerrera dies, he's saying it's all for the same cause, though. So they're unified in that sense. But then when Jyn Erso comes back and she's like, we need to go to war, that has so much more color and depth to it, because you've realized and you've seen now for Andor that the past 5 to 10 years of the Rebellion have really been a struggle of when are we going to really come out and show our firepower and make a move on the Empire. And the answer has been not yet. Not yet. And so when Jyn Erso shows up, she's like, hey, this is it. This is the weapon that you guys have been talking about, which we've seen now at the end of Andor. This is the weapon. Galen Erso, Kyber crystals, or I guess not Kyber crystals in Andor, but whatever they're mining on Gorman. This is it. And all the little things they're building for the Death Star on Narkina 5 in Season 1. This is it. This is what you've been waiting for. We need to go to war. And the Rebellion is like, we can't. We're going to get destroyed, and how do we know if we believe you, and all that kind of stuff. And amazingly, it's Cassian who steps up. It's Cassian who says, I see what this is, and maybe, now looking back, maybe this is kind of the Luthen in him, seeing that this is all what it's been building towards, and this is all what they've been fighting for, and he goes along with it. And so then you get to Scarif, and Scarif, everybody's running around, and explosion. It's a great action scene. It's one of the best space battles ever, including in Star Wars, I contend. All that stuff's great. Darth Vader, obviously, just wow, amazing. I mean, that scene at the end, you're just chills. But, one thing that I noticed now in light of Andor is that there are so many things in play that have been set up by Andor, by the events of Andor, that are now coming to fruition. This is it. This is what the Rebellion was for. And it's not even the third act. It's almost like Andor was Act 1 of the Rebellion. Rogue One is Act 2, and then A New Hope is Act 3, right? A New Hope is really the coup de grace of how the Rebellion is able to finally destroy the Death Star. And they don't even overthrow the Empire in general, right? I guess the entire original trilogy is Act 3. But in terms of the first Death Star, this is really what it is. And you see all these small sacrifices that people are making, and you say small, quote unquote, because people are dying. That's obviously not a small thing. But I suppose, in terms of war and military, individual lives being lost, right, for the greater good. And you see all of that going on. And each member of Rogue One dies, doing what they believe is right and sacrificing themselves for the greater good. And you realize that this has been a theme that has been running all the way back to the beginning of Andor, to the beginning of the Rebellion, when Luthen shows up, right? Luthen shows up to Andor, to meet Andor, and he's like, look, this is an opportunity. Wouldn't you rather, I forget what it is, wouldn't you rather give your life to something meaningful, something like that, he says to him. And this is where it started. And all throughout, Luthen has been building and building and building and building until his death. And he firmly believes that there is something bigger going on that needs to be built. Pieces need to be pushed in. And Luthen, by the way, is not, he did some really bad things. I mean, in that episode in Andor Season 2 with him and Clea, it's shown very explicitly that Luthen was willing to push the limits to get what he needed, right? And Cassian, at the beginning of Andor Season, or not Andor Season 2, but Rogue One, does the same thing. And these people are pushing for a cause that they know they will not see the end of. And it's all these little things, right? All these little things that are building and building and building and building. And Rogue One is that exclamation point. Rogue One is the point where they go, this is it. This is what we've been looking for. Now it's time to make a move. So really, to kind of wrap this segment up, I would say that Andor's biggest impact is not really to Rogue One in general, but it's actually to all of Star Wars, which is amazing. Because now, if you take a step back and look at the bigger picture of the original trilogy, and you take a bigger picture lens of what happened after Order 66 all the way through the end of Episode 6, you understand the exact arc of the rebellion. This is a story of the rebellion. And I mean, we all knew that, right? We knew that, it's not like this show was making any pretenses of Andor is the next chosen one or anything like that. This is about a guy who becomes a leader in the rebellion. But to showcase what the rebellion had to go through in order to overthrow the Empire into the New Republic. This is it. We see the beginnings of the rebellion, how hard they had to work, how scared everyone was, and how they had to live in the shadows but take small victories until they finally are able to break through in Rogue One, and then see their fruits come to fruition in the original trilogy. I think that's really what I love the most about Andor in the context of Rogue One, is that now we have such a full, rich picture of how the Empire became complacent, didn't want to even think about the fact that there were rebels hiding under their noses, and the rebels, meanwhile, were not just coming out of nowhere and outing themselves and trying to take things and get themselves killed immediately and so to quiet the rebellion, but rather were taking small victories and coming out of the woodwork slowly until finally they were able to surprise the Empire right under their noses, and that's how they were able to get the Death Star plans. I think that's really what is amazing about all of this storytelling. So anyways, guys, I just wanted to take a few minutes here to revisit Rogue One, because I really think that Andor, regardless of whatever you think about it, I think the storytelling is so incredibly intricate, and now we have such a rich picture of how the rebellion came to be, and I think that is awesome. So guys, have you had a chance to watch Rogue One again after Andor Season 2? I would highly, highly recommend it. It is such a good watch. Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, so earlier on in this podcast, I talked about my hopes and predictions for Ironheart, and this segment doesn't really change any of those, but the news that we're going to talk about here, which came out a little bit after I recorded my hopes and predictions segment, has me a little more worried than I would have liked to have been about Ironheart. So we just got confirmation, and by the time you're listening to this, this might be old news, or at least this is going to be known news, because hopefully this will release right before Ironheart, so you guys will have known this already. But Ironheart is going to rather unleash or go by a very unconventional, at least for Disney standards, release strategy. What I mean by that is that we got confirmation just before, actually exactly a week before the Ironheart premiere, that Ironheart is going to be split up into 2 releases. And so Ironheart will be done within the span of 7 days. June 24th, we'll release episodes 1, 2, and 3. And July 1st, we'll release episodes 4, 5, and 6. Now, on the surface, this in itself is not necessarily concerning. I think, though, if you look back at historical precedent for the MCU, there are some reasons to be a little bit concerned. First of all, like I've been saying before, and if you are listening to the entire podcast, and we already talked about this in the previous segment about how, Ironheart seemed to be a project that was just buried for a while and has now come back, and it's almost like, hey, let's just get this out here, which I hope is not the case. I hope this series ends up being my favorite series of all of them. I really do. I really, really do. I don't have a lot of confidence that it will, and this lends to it, because the only other series in the MCU who did not release their episodes weekly, and I'm not talking about a 2-episode premiere or whatnot, or I'm not even talking about an Andor style where you have 3 episodes every week, but it's very intentional, right? Like, sure, most MCU Disney Plus series, lately at least, or maybe not most, but a few of them, like Daredevil Born Again, will release their first 2 episodes on the first week. And even Daredevil Born Again had released a couple episodes in 1 week later on. So that's all fine. right? That's all fine. I think even Skeleton Crew did that, so it's just been a trend. That's not what I'm worried about. So before this news, right, I was hearing, oh, Ironheart's going to release its first 3 episodes, which is half the season, and in 1 week, and I was like, okay, sure, why not? Had me a little bit concerned, but I was like, okay, if you go 1 through 3, and then you just go 4, 5, and 6, fine, whatever. Hearing this news, though, evokes to me one show in particular, and that is Echo. Echo actually did not employ this strategy. What Echo did was release all 5 episodes on the same day, January of 2023. And that in itself was it 2024? Maybe 2024. That in itself was not a good thing, because while I personally thought Echo was fine, it was okay, clearly Disney did not have faith in that show to release all 5 episodes at once. Because if you think about it, right, even though the MCU Disney Plus shows have been up and down, they've been pretty rocky, let's be honest. They have not been consistent, to say the least. One of the things that, that Marvel Disney Plus shows had going for them was sort of the weekly anticipation. Even going back to Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki Season 2, Daredevil Boarding and the weekly anticipation, right? Other shows, even Agatha all along, to an extent, had the weekly anticipation for it as well. She-Hulk maybe less so, but Miss Marvel for sure. And really the crown jewel of all of this is, of course, WandaVision. WandaVision was the show, it was appointment television. Everybody wanted to see it every week and talk about it every week. Marvel, and to an extent Disney and Star Wars and all the other shows that they produce, Marvel knows that if they have something really good, they're going to want to space it out. And it's not like any other big Disney show is going to come out soon. We're not going to count Eyes of Wakanda. That's sort of an anthology. But even then, Ironheart could have finished up right around the time Eyes of Wakanda was going to release. There's no other big Star Wars or Marvel show that's coming out until December, I think, for Wonder Man. So it's weird. And it's concerning because if they knew that Ironheart was going to generate that kind of buzz, then you'd think they'd at least, maybe they release the first 2 episodes at once and then they go 3, 4, 5, and 6. But now releasing it in 2 halves has me a little bit worried that they're like, yeah, this show is not going to really land. Now, counter argument to that, maybe, and this doesn't really ring true to me, this doesn't seem like it's very likely, but maybe I looked at Ironheart very much like they did with Andor and they said, no, this show really does function much better in 3 and 3. Maybe that's what happened. I don't know. Frankly, that could be an explanation as to what's going on here. It doesn't seem very likely to me, to be quite honest with you. But again, as we look forward to Ironheart, and Ironheart, again, could be amazing. I don't know. I'm just saying, based on precedent, that this to me is not a good sign. I'm hoping for the best. I really am. But I just don't really know what to make of this. So we'll see. I might be able to review all 3 episodes of Ironheart, the first 3 episodes, for next week's episode, but if not, I'll be able to do one for the entire season, I guess, when it comes out, because I'll be traveling for the 4th of July and all that kind of stuff, so may not be able to do Ironheart 1, 2, and 3 when it comes out. We might just do a whole season review when it wraps up, but I'm holding out for the best. I don't know if I feel super confident in what I've been seeing, just in terms of, the trailers have been fine, but then also this marketing or release strategy, so we will see. I'm really, though, hoping. Again, people think I'm lying when I say this. I really hope Ironheart is the best Disney Plus TV show, because then it means we got something awesome. It means we got something better than WandaVision, and I welcome that. I want the next WandaVision, so we'll see about that. What do you think about this new release strategy? Disney hasn't employed this before. What do you think about this? What does this mean for Ironheart? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, we are officially back on DCU Casting Watch, and now we have another starring member of the DCU joining this expanding universe as we gear up for Superman in just about 3 weeks, which is very, very exciting. So, we officially have the announcement that Tom Rhys-Harries is going to be playing none other than the titular role of Clayface. This has been reported by all of the major trades, so Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, etc. And I'm going to read a little bit from this article from Deadline, and then we'll talk about it on the other side. So, headline, Tom Rhys-Harries lands Clayface role in DC Studios' Clayface, directed by James Watkins. The beginning here, it's what we know. When it came to casting the lead in DC Studios' next big movie, Clayface, the studio went with a fresh face, that being Welsh actor Tom Rhys-Harries. He was known for being in the Apple TV series Suspicion, and this is interesting because this has been reported and leaked and rumored for a while, but he beat out a competitive list of British thespians that included 28 years later Jack O'Connell, The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, Tom Blythe, and 1917's George McKay. So a lot of talented actors here, but the article is right. They went with a relative unknown. I haven't seen Suspicion yet, so I really have zero familiarity with Tom Rhys-Harries, but I'm sure that after this announcement, a lot of people are going to go check out the TV show Suspicion. But I think that this is an interesting move because not because of Tom Rees-Harris himself, but because it indicates one thing in particular, and that is that Clayface will have a human form, is what I'm assuming. Now, the other alternative is that there will, it'll be just Tom Rees-Harris playing motion capture for the most part, and then maybe we see the actual human being in flashback scenes and whatnot. But to me, what this indicates is that Clayface, the character, will have a more permanent human side to him. Because one of the interesting things about Clayface is that you could have gotten 10 different actors to play Clayface. 10 different people, actors, actresses, anybody. You could have gotten anybody, because Clayface, right? If you've watched Harley Quinn, that's really where I know Clayface from. But also he appeared briefly in Creature Commandos. But where we know Clayface, what we know Clayface can do is impersonate people and transform into different people. Actually, he did that in Creature Commandos. I forget who he was impersonating, but he was impersonating somebody, some professor, I think, in Creature Commandos. And so that's the interesting thing, is that Clayface could be any number of people. In fact, they could have cast 10 A-list actors and have had them playing one character. So I think it's interesting that we land on Tom Rees-Harris. And who knows, maybe in the coming weeks we'll get announcements of, and also Tom Blythe is playing Clayface, and also X actor is playing Clayface, and also X actor is playing Clayface. So I don't know. But I think it is interesting that we do get a quote-unquote home base for Clayface, because, again, with these shape-shifting kind of characters, you never know. And I'm sure we still will, even with Tom Rees-Harris playing the quote-unquote permanent version of Clayface, I'm sure we still will get a lot of shenanigans. And it's horror-based, right? So I'm sure that there will be a lot of creepy and crazy things that Clayface turns into to terrify his victims or whatnot. But I think that, this gives us a sense, that there is going to be a face behind the Clayface, if you will. That didn't make any sense, but hopefully you guys get the gist. So very interesting. And also, again, it's to me, this film is endlessly interesting to me because of how quickly it got fast-tracked, right? We were all thinking, okay, Superman and then Supergirl, which is now called Supergirl, not Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. That didn't seem like big enough news to make a whole segment about, but there it is. So Superman, Supergirl. And then, I kind of thought, okay, are they going to do Authority, or are they going to do, Wonder Woman maybe comes next? Or, no, of course, Batman, Brave and the Bold. And I thought, okay, there are a whole lot of films. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this Clayface film shows up, and Clayface showed up already. He was in the first DCU project of being Creature Commandos, and so you kind of thought, okay, so maybe Clayface does have a more significant role to play in the DCU than we originally thought. Who knows? But I think it's all super interesting to see that how quickly all this is coming together. This film is going to come out in, I think, October 2026, so it's actually going to come out much sooner than we think. And I think that that's something to look forward to as well, that this is getting off the ground. So guys, do you have any thoughts about Tom Rees-Harris playing Clayface? And if you don't, because maybe none of you have heard of him, I certainly didn't hear of him before hearing about this news, what do you think of the idea that, do you think Clayface is going to have one human form in particular that he gravitates towards? Or perhaps, that is the person that became Clayface after transforming into Clayface? Or do you think that there still will be a lot of different other personas and people playing Clayface as well? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, as the summer continues to kick off in the movie world, we are looking forward to so many movies, including, of course, Elio, F1, and we'll talk more about Elio later on in the podcast episode as I've seen it, but Elio, F1, and then Fantastic Four, Superman, all of these amazing movies coming out this summer. But I think one of the most interesting movies to me is Jurassic World Rebirth, because Jurassic World Rebirth is technically the third soft reboot, or I guess the second soft reboot, the third iteration of the franchise. First one being Jurassic Park, Jurassic Park 2, and then Jurassic Park 3, Jurassic Park The Lost World, I guess, is number 2. And then the second iteration being Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, Jurassic World Dominion, and now we're entering the third iteration, which all take place in the same universe, for sure, but is still going to be sort of a soft reboot with Scarlett Johansson, Jonathan Bailey, and Mahershala Ali. So, looking forward to that. And it's directed by Gareth Edwards as well, so that's also interesting. And I'm again looking forward to it. But the trailers have been good. I've been pretty excited. The action looks pretty fun. And one of the interesting things about this franchise is that it's a fortunate franchise in the sense of it just has a forever appeal. It seems like. And we said that before with other franchises, but for example, right, you can't just keep making Rocky movies or Terminator movies or whatever and expect them to continue to make money, because it just doesn't have that same broad appeal as these dinosaur movies do with Jurassic World, Jurassic Park. Jurassic World, which I thought was fine. It was pretty good with Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard. It was good. Made $1.5 or $1.6 billion. The next two films I thought were not so good, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom and Jurassic World Dominion, and they both made $1 billion. Now, granted, Jurassic World Dominion the last one, made just over $1 billion. But to me, it was the worst movie of the bunch, and it pretty decidedly made tons of money and cleared the $1 billion mark. So it's an interesting franchise because you'd think that if you just make a good movie or a decent enough movie, or for that matter, if you just make a movie in this franchise, you're going to make close to $1 billion. I've put Jurassic World Rebirth at $1 billion, I believe, over $1 billion for the summer because it's coming out at prime time during 4th of July. That is dead middle of the summer. All the kids are out from school. And if this movie is any good, which it seems like based on the cast, Scarlett Johansson and Mahershala Ali don't just pick projects out of the blue. They gravitate towards projects, Blade notwithstanding for Mahershala Ali, but they gravitate towards really good projects. And it seems like this movie is on track to be pretty good. And I think it's easily going to crush at the box office. And now we have our first reactions to Jurassic World Rebirth. And they are coming from the United Kingdom premiere. So I'm going to read out a few of these reactions and we're going to talk about them on the other side. This first one here, it says, got to check out Jurassic World Rebirth tonight and had a really good time with it. Was happy to see dinosaurs be scary again. Gareth Edwards does a great job of making you feel the scale of things and presents them in such a terrifying way. Some great set pieces too. Next reaction, Jurassic World Rebirth was a lot of fun and had all the Jurassic feels. It doesn't, It doesn't advance the overall story much, but the story here is interesting and the characters are good. It felt like the original trilogy, which makes me happy. One scene in particular gave me chills. Pause here to say, I don't know what it means by saying doesn't advance the overall story. I don't care about the overall story. I mean, it wasn't because, they brought back the original cast members in Jurassic World Dominion. That didn't make the movie any better or any worse, inherently. It was the execution of that movie. So just because you're advancing the quote-unquote overall story of the Jurassic World universe, I don't really care. I just want a good movie. So that's something I wanted to comment on with that reaction. Next reaction, Jurassic World Rebirth is a fantastic addition to the franchise, delivering everything you want and more. From the action to the cinematography, Gareth Edwards knows how to craft a great dinosaur movie. This one captures the spirit of the originals and pulls you right back in. That's okay, very positive. I'm going to read a couple more here. Jurassic World Rebirth is a solid entry into the franchise. Some really great action and stunning visuals. Loved the new dinosaurs and how the movie leaned in, into how terrifying they could be. This one has the spirit of Jurassic Park. It makes some nice callbacks to the original. And one more reaction here. Jurassic World Rebirth is everything you want. The plot can be silly, but who cares? The film is gorgeous, the dinosaurs are awesome, and Jonathan Bailey may be one of my new favorite actors. My heart was racing, and there was a moment where I was so happy I wanted to cheer. So again, I have to say, we have to caveat all this every single time we do one of these videos about initial reactions by saying that initial reactions are initial reactions. And they don't necessarily, they usually skew positive, right? Not to say that it's, if positive reactions are coming out of a movie for these initial social media reactions, it doesn't mean it's a bad thing, right? It doesn't mean that, don't take them into account because it means that the movie's going to be bad, whatever. It doesn't mean that. It just means that we want to take these with a grain of salt, right? It doesn't mean that this is all going to be 100% film on Rotten Tomatoes. Rather, the reason I do these segments is to glean what are the trends that people are talking about. Like, what are some consistencies that people are talking about for the film? And for this movie, and this is all really good, in my opinion, from what I'm hoping for and expecting from Jurassic World Rebirth, which we'll do a segment about that in a couple weeks, hopefully, is a really fun time. And yeah, the plot can be silly, which is what a couple people are saying. That's fine. I mean, I don't want the plot to be ridiculous. I think the plot of the last couple of films were kind of ridiculous, but silly is okay as long as it makes some sense, right? And really what the standouts here are, the action seems to be great. Some of the actors, are being called out, Jonathan Bailey, for example. And I just think that what people want, what I want in particular, is just a really solid return to the franchise. What I don't need, although it would have been welcome for sure, is for people to say, Jurassic World Rebirth rivals the original Jurassic Park. That would have been awesome. I don't need that, though, to be excited about Jurassic World Rebirth. The trailers have been good. I just need to know if it's going to be a solid, entertaining movie, and I'm going to go see it regardless. But still, I to be excited about this movie, I think to me, this is all good from what I'm hearing, that, the characters are pretty good. The actors are really good. The action is great. The dinosaurs are scary. And that's one thing where even though I don't like terror, tension is always great in a movie. And I don't think that this is going into the horror elements of movie making. I think this is more just, leaning into the tension of the dinosaurs. And I think that that's a really good thing. So I'm excited from these first reactions. We'll see as the initial reviews come out. But again, looking forward to the film very, very much. Guys, what do you think about these first reactions for Jurassic World Rebirth? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys, it has snuck up on us, but we are here to talk about today the latest entry in the Pixar canon. We're here to talk today about the newest Pixar film, animated film, Elio. So this is going to be a non-spoiler review for Elio. I don't think I'm going to do spoilers. If I do decide to talk about spoilers at the very end, I will let you guys know. But for the most part, and throughout the majority of the segment, this will be completely non-spoiler. So do not worry about hearing anything that you do not want to know. This is just going to be my thoughts on the film Elio and how I experienced it. So let's dive into the film. So like I mentioned before, it really seemed like this movie snuck up on us. It snuck up on me. Because, I mean, I've seen the marketing around. I've seen posters and things on, the sides of streets and whatnot. So I've seen, the marketing going on. And the trailers have obviously been playing in front of a lot of movies that we've been watching thus far in 2025. But it just hasn't felt like any of the marketing has clicked. I've done segments on the trailers. I think both are the main trailers. And for whatever reason, the trailers, they just don't seem to be hitting. Now, granted, and this is just my opinion, by the way, if you love the Elio trailers, that's awesome. That's great. I personally thought they just didn't really click. But, to caveat that, I also think a lot of Pixar trailers are pretty bad for some reason. And I think the reason is, I've come to this conclusion at this point, is because these Pixar films, I don't care what anyone says, these are not films made for kids. These are children-friendly movies. In fact, they are, in terms of the target demographic for box office, for sure, they're trying to draw in as many kids as possible. But in terms of just the quote-unquote artistry or the story or whatever, the director, the intent behind it, these are movies made for adults. I truly believe that, with the exception of a few films in the Pixar canon. And my suspicion is that when the marketing team goes in, they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place because they don't know, they need to market this movie to kids, so the trailers kind of come off as kiddie and a little goofy, when in reality the films are so much more. I didn't love the trailers for Inside Out 2, I loved Inside Out 2, didn't love the trailers for Toy Story 4, loved Toy Story 4, so it just kind of goes to show, same with Elemental, it just kind of goes to show you that I feel like they don't really know what to do with the marketing in general with these Pixar films. So I haven't loved the trailers for Elio. And so with all that in mind, I said, you know what, though, the last time I went into an original Pixar film was Elemental, and I loved Elemental. I didn't love the trailers, but I just went in and had an open mind, and I loved it, so I wanted to do the same for Elio. So I knew, other than the trailers of just this little boy wanting to go to space and meeting aliens, that is literally all I knew about the movie. And obviously some of the scenes in the trailer, they, if you've seen the trailers, you'll know the scene about being in the bathroom of that giant alien place. That's in every single trailer. So, I mean, first, I remember those scenes, but aside from that, I didn't know anything. And so in light of that, like I said before, this is a non-spoiler review. So I'm going to assume that you guys know the same amount of stuff that I knew going into the movie, which is next to nothing. So we're not going to talk about the film in detail at all. Here's what I will say about Elio. I think Elio, for me, is a very solid B-tier Pixar movie. And you have to understand when I say that. For me, one of the first videos I did with Pixar was actually tier listing all the Pixar films. This was in 2020, though, so a lot of films have come out since then. And for Pixar, while the quality, I think some of their best films are mostly in the past, pre-pandemic, right? Even though I do love Toy Story 4 and Inside Out 2, other films like Soul, I like Soul a lot. I really like Elemental a lot. I think Luca, Turning Red, Lightyear, they're fine. They're okay. And I don't think that Pixar has hit on those films as consistently as they were doing with Monsters, Inc. and Up and Ratatouille and in The Incredibles. And even the first Cars was okay. It was okay. So I don't think Pixar has been quite up there. That being said, though, the standard that they've set over the past 25, 30 years is so high in terms of quality that a B-tier Pixar film, even today, is still really good. I liked Elio. I did. And I think that Elio has all of those elements that you come to expect from a Pixar film. It has the fun. It has the likable characters. It has the emotional journey. It has the growth, right? Characters that, grow a lot in these movies. It has the appeal to kids, but it also has the appeal to adults. I think that there are a few trademark Pixar touching moments at the end. And even towards the middle as well. There are a lot of moments throughout the second half where, you feel it, right? And I think that that's really good. What separates this movie from other Pixar movies in the A and, the higher tier for me are a few things. Number one, I think the protagonist Elio felt a little bit rushed. And again, going into very minimal detail here, but, he's going through his journey, his character journey, right? And I think that the movie is relatively short. Now, I know a lot of Pixar movies are pretty short compared to, your typical Marvel film that's 2.5 hours long. These Pixar films are between 90 and 120 minutes usually, and Elio comes in on the shorter side of 96 minutes. So it's just over an hour and a half with credits, right? It's pretty short. And I think you can kind of feel that. I think that a lot of the times when these characters are going through these moments of growth, they are sped through them. And almost these characters in certain scenes become caricatures of themselves. I think Elio is a prime example, but other characters in the movie as well become caricatures in a sense because they want you to understand how you get from point A to point B with these characters. And in that sense, you understand it. So by the time you get to those emotional moments that you would come to expect with the Pixar film, it hits because just like with any other Pixar film, for the most part, they speak to these universal truths about life. And that's what makes Pixar so successful, I think, in striking those emotional moments. Some people call it emotional manipulation, jokingly. And I kind of get that because Pixar just seems to know what buttons to push to kind of get those tears flowing, right? But I don't think, I think that it's because what Pixar writers are doing are really tapping into those things that connect us and make us human. I think that's, Inside Out was my favorite movie of all time. Now it's La La Land, but it's still top 2, top 3 favorite movies of all time. And that's because the ending scene where Riley comes home and says she misses home speaks so resonantly and profoundly to the experience of life, of connection, of leaving a place, of becoming accustomed to change. And on top of that, the entire film built up to that moment. And so then that's why the moment is so resonant. And in Elio, you have those same moments where you're like, wow, this is, it's speaking to something that is very true to life. And yet I didn't feel like the film itself built up to it in a proper way so that you have still the emotional resonance of that moment itself without any of the buildup. Not without any of the buildup, but without the same kind of buildup that would make you really feel it. In this case, I'm like, yeah, I feel it, but not in the same way. I like the voice cast. I think they're okay. I think the younger voice actors in this movie, they do a fine job. Again, it kind of goes to that thing of being caricatures of themselves at some point. At points of the movie, it's like they're expected to be sort of overly kiddie at some points, but then the more quiet and contemplative moments are few and far between in the movie. And I will say also, again, no spoilers, but, part of the movie does take place in space. That was in the trailers. And, I think that those moments are cool and the sci-fi-ish elements are fun and interesting and they go a couple interesting places with them. That being said, I did feel like there were a few moments in the film where it was like, hey, let's just be sci-fi because we're in space. Like, why not? Why not? And it's fine and all. I mean, use the backdrop of the movie. Use your characters, use your setting, and have fun with it, right? Totally. And there are a couple really fun characters that come from those space settings as well. I think that there are a couple really strong standout supporting characters, particularly one alien in particular. I said particularly in particular. One alien in particular supporting character that you see him in the trailers, but I was completely expecting him to just annoy me the entire movie based on the trailers, and he was really adorable and endearing, and I love that. That was great. So, there are a lot of good things that come out of that space setting, but sometimes in the film, it feels like the movie just goes, hey, let's just be sci-fi, let's just be space vibes just for the sake of it. Because we're here, we might as well. And it's not uninteresting, it's just not, it feels like it's moving away from the central point and the central story of the movie, which I have to say, in general, is strong. It just feels a little rushed. But the general story of what's going on here and the beats of it, you see what they were going for. And what they were going for does hit in certain places. There is an emotional resonance to the idea of Elio, who, again, premise of the movie, wants to go to space. He wants to feel like he's part of this thing. Space, it appeals to him in a certain sense, wants to be a part of it. And there are a lot of really interesting things going on thematically there. By the time you get to the end of the movie, by the way, the ending of the movie, no spoilers, I promise. I said that many times, but some of the shots at the end of the movie are gorgeous. And I should just say as well, it goes without saying at this point, but Pixar animation, up until this point, I hope the VFX artists are all paid and are working fair hours and being paid equitably, because, just the quality of animation that is in this movie is beautiful. There are some shots in here where there aren't humans or aren't any human settings, and it's just sort of space shots or nature shots or whatever. And some of the shots are photorealistic. They're beautiful. They're gorgeous. So that goes without saying. The animation is really great. The characters are a little goofy, I will say. They feel a little bit more exaggerated than other Pixar films, like maybe your Toy Stories or whatever. But I think it's just the style. It's more like Luca in terms of animation style. So take that for what you will. But again, I think that the pieces are there, and it's a fun ride for sure. But I did come out of it thinking this. I do wish this could have been more, and that's disappointing because, like I said at the beginning of the segment, I do feel like the marketing campaign just didn't really know what to do with this movie, even down to the title, Elio. I know that some Pixar films are bizarrely titled, and you just don't really. I mean, Up or Ratatouille. I think Up is actually kind of a clever title based on the balloons and whatnot. But Ratatouille, like, wow, okay, what is that? But for the most part, these Pixar films have been that have been released in theaters have been pretty well marketed, right? You have your Inside Out is a really interesting premise, or The Incredibles was interesting, Monsters Inc. And I think just the premise of Elio, people are like, who's Elio? What's Elio? What's it about? And you're just, what you tell people is, oh, it's about a kid going to space. And they're like, okay. And I feel like the movie just had a little bit of a marketing problem. So I enjoyed the movie. I'm not out here saying that this is the best movie of the year. You should go see it immediately. I would say if you are interested in Pixar films, if you like Pixar films, if you have kids, if you are just into animation, into good storytelling, it's a quick movie, go and see it. It's not a ringing endorsement, though. And I understand that. And I understand that if people hear them, they go, I'm going to pass on this one. And that's a bummer because I wish that people would support good movies like this. But I also understand time and money, they're, priorities. And I worry about a movie like this. I hope it does as well as Elemental, which I think had a stronger marketing campaign of the premise, right? Fire and water, rom-com, fun times. And I hope that people go see this movie. But I fear that it's just going to kind of get buried in the canon of Pixar, kind of like Luca did because of the pandemic and Turning Red and Soul. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. So I enjoyed Elio, but again, it's probably solidly in the B tier of Pixar, and I probably won't go back to it unless we do a full Pixar rewatch at some point, which we probably will. But who knows about that? So guys, have you seen Elio? And if you haven't, are you looking forward to it? And are you going to go see it? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, ever since tragically Chadwick Boseman, we lost him, ever since that fateful day in 2020 when it was announced Chadwick Boseman had passed away from prostate cancer, I mean, obviously we lost an icon. We lost one of the best in the business, and it seemed like, obviously none of us really knew him other than the people who worked with him, but it seemed like from all accounts we lost one of the best people, one of the best human beings, and it was really a tragedy. And of course, a lot of us who are in this community, in the movie community, movie-loving community, have known him as Black Panther, as T'Challa. And so this was coming off of the high of Avengers Endgame. The character of T'Challa had just come back to life, along with so many of the other Avengers, and we were now looking forward to what the new adventures of the MCU characters were going to be with Wanda, WandaVision, and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki. So we were all very excited, and obviously Black Panther 2 was, of course, something. The first movie was such a cultural phenomenon, box office hit. It was, of course, going to happen, but then he passes away. And so time moves on, and we have time to heal, and Ryan Coogler and Kevin Feige eventually come out and say that Black Panther, the character of T'Challa, will not be recast. And that obviously sparked a lot of conversation because a lot of people thought the most respectful and best decision would have been to recast T'Challa. Now at the time, and again, this is all documented on the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel, you can go check it out. At the time I said, well, I would have preferred if they had recast T'Challa because I think that the character of T'Challa was very important, and I think carrying on his legacy would have been great. But I also very, very much respect the decision of Ryan Coogler and Kevin Feige because those two individuals were some of the people outside of his family and friends, obviously, who knew him the best. And I had no doubt in my mind that they had every intention of trying to honor the man that they knew and loved. I had no doubt about that in my mind. So the decision to not recast T'Challa was one that I said, well, as an outsider, and especially also coming off of The Rise of Skywalker, where we saw in hindsight how it worked of not recasting Carrie Fisher and using that reused footage, and it just didn't work. But Black Panther 2 was going to take a different approach. It was obviously not going to use archive footage of Chadwick Boseman. It was going to shift the focus onto Shuri as Black Panther. We didn't know it at the time, but that's what was going to happen. And so, again, I said at the time, I think I would have preferred the recast, but also I had no doubt that they were going to do what was best in their eyes to honor their beloved friend. And so Black Panther Wakanda Forever came out. And I watched the film. I love the film because it was a way for us as an audience to grieve alongside the people who made the film and the people who really love Chadwick Boseman. I thought it was beautiful. Now, all that being said, now with the recent rumors and speculation that there is going to be a new Black Panther, and obviously setting up, the MCU itself set up the idea that there could be a new T'Challa, with literally the child of T'Challa being T'Challa II, that there is this idea now of in the future there could be a new Black Panther, a new T'Challa rather, because Shuri is Black Panther right now. She's going to be in Avengers Doomsday, so that is going to happen. That's exciting. But, you know, now there's speculation that, okay, are we going to recast T'Challa at this point in the MCU, especially with multiverse? You could do a whole lot of things with multiverse. And on top of the fact that, well, there was this quote-unquote supposedly leaked concept art for Avengers Doomsday, which to this day, I don't even know if it's real or I don't even know if it's not real. We did a whole segment about that. And who knows, right? It's concept art. Anyways, even if it's real, it's concept art. It could not, you know, it may not be true. But that concept art did show somebody in a Black Panther outfit who looked an awful lot like an actor named Damson Idris. Now, Damson Idris is not an actor who I was particularly familiar with until this year, because this year, obviously with the whole leaked concept art, quote unquote, and then also with a film called F1. I don't know if you've heard of it. Very small film, directed by Top Gun Maverick's Joseph Kosinski, is coming out very, very soon, and I am quite excited for it. Brad Pitt and Damson Idris are the stars of that film, and so Damson Idris was doing press because I think now he's being associated with T'Challa a lot at this point, with all the speculation of him being one of the potential fits for a recast, given the multiverse and whatnot, and also given that concept art, whatever that was, he's being asked about it. And so he was asked on, I believe this is Good Morning America or one of those talk show hosts, and they asked him, okay, well, there have been rumors that you're going to be the next Black Panther. Is that true? Yes or no? And to which he responds jokingly, I should add, he says jokingly, yes, no. So this wasn't a slip up. It wasn't a Mark Ruffalo, oh, you should wait till you see the next Avengers film, everyone dies, or half of everyone dies, and everyone's like, oh, what was that? This isn't the case. This was the Today Show, not Good Morning America, I should add. But this is, Damson Idris very clearly, intentionally choosing his words and saying yes, no. And then he was asked later on, but if you were offered the role of Black Panther, would you say yes? And he says very quickly, very clearly, yes. So again, I've said this before with many times where we take these because, he's on a talk show, he's doing interviews, he's probably doing tons of interviews and he just, whatever. I've said this before because on this channel, I don't want to take people's words out of context. I actually really want to do the work of recontextualizing what people say. So what this is could be nothing. Could be Damson Idris saying, oh, look at all these rumors. Aren't these fun rumors? I'm not the next Black Panther. They've never approached me for that. But hey, people are asking me about it, so let's just have some fun. I've always said, though, that I'm of the mind that if somebody outright denies something, right? If somebody outright, especially in this context of superhero casting, if somebody outright says, are you the next X character? Are you the next Ghost Rider? If they ask Ryan Gosling. And he says, no, I'm not. It doesn't necessarily mean that he is telling the truth, because Andrew Garfield obviously lied his way to Spider-Man No Way Home. But if he really wasn't Ghost Rider, it seems like that's what he would say. Because think about it, right? If you aren't Ghost Rider and you're being asked, are you Ghost Rider? Why would you say yes? Why would you even play coy about it if you're just not Ghost Rider? The answer for me, and I haven't done PR for this kind of stuff, so I don't know. But for me, I would think the answer would be, no, that's a fun rumor and whatnot. But no, I'm definitely not the next Ghost Rider, but it'd be fun to join that universe. That would be the answer. And a lot of actors have given that answer. So by saying no, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're telling the truth, but I would think that if they weren't, if the answer was actually no, then they would say no. So by Damson Idris playing coy and actually saying, I don't know, yes, no, right? I think that that's at least a little more credence to the fact that this rumor could be picking up steam. So I'm going to file this under, let's monitor this and let's keep this in mind, because again, with that, whatever that concept art was and with the fan castings, I don't put a whole lot of weight into that, to be quite honest with you. This, though, is starting to tip the scales a little bit towards something of interest. I'm not saying I fully buy into the fact that Damson Idris is going to be the next T'Challa. I don't know, but it's something where all of a sudden it's gone from, put it on the back burner to, okay, something of interest, and the next time Damson Idris and Black Panther get mentioned again, we're going to pay attention to it. So that's my take on this. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Do you think that this is perhaps an outright confirmation from Damson Idris that he's going to be the next Black Panther? I don't think so. But do you think that that's the case? Or do you think that this is just another flash in the pan and nothing's going to happen from this? Let me know in the comments down below. And everybody, that will do it for episode number 83 of the Access Blockbusters Pod. Thank you so much for joining us again. Road to 2,000 subscribers, and it's been a blast, guys. We are deep into the summer months, and next week, I'm hoping I'll be able to do a review of F1, hopefully, fingers crossed. And look forward to a lot of great content coming up. Comic-Con is about a month away, and so we'll definitely be covering that when that happens. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys, and I will see you all in the next one.